Hello, and welcome to Arcologies and Mars, where we have two speakers. The first is Libby Hubbard. She is a Doctor of Future Studies and almost a lifelong alumni of the Solari Foundation. The Solari Foundation actually built a prototype arcology just a little bit north of here, and you can see a picture of it here. And then I'm Patrick Arneson, the editor of the arcologychannel.org, an author and futurist, and also like day job, an engineer at Microsoft specializing in virtual reality. So what do? We're here to educate and advocate for arcologies and to point out some of the benefits between arcologies on Earth and habitats on Mars, and how arcologies can be helpful to Martians or future Martians. Arcologies, we believe, are valuable for solving climate change in the long run, adapting to climate change in hot environments in the short run, for living richer and more fulfilling lives for the residents, and for preparing for Mars and for space colonization. So in this talk, we're going to be introducing what are arcologies, how arcologies can help Earth, and how arcologies can help Mars. So to start off, this is the core of what an arcology is. It's essentially a green city or a green town or division. It can be either open air or completely climate controlled, depending on your environment. It can have these sort of enclosed indoor-outdoor spaces, like you see here in the example picture. And the most important thing about arcologies from an engineering point of view is they close some of the biocycles that we can no longer depend on Earth because of global warming. That is temperature control and access to water. Those are the foundation of our civilization going back 10,000 years, and we can no longer rely on them in the near future. And even today in certain places, they have become unreliable, and that becomes an existential threat. Arcologies are also car-free. And you can imagine car-free cities with paths for humans, bicycle paths, and also the little Amazon robots that can move cargo around. So automated cargo delivery and freight would be another thing to do. So I'm trying to keep it like super minimalistic because you folks are Mars folks, and most of this probably just makes sense. So I'll be blasting through this. There's also important social aspects to an arcology. If you had an arcology of 5,000 or 10,000 people, and I think 5,000 is kind of the minimum because you need to create that essential buzz of a human habitation that makes life, that adds to the quality of everyone's lives. But that would break down into these little communities or villages of about 200 people that you can get to know, get to trust, get to love, and encompasses the full diversity, everything from children to the elderly and working age people in between. And these villages where you share resources and basically live close by allows you to benefit from each other's company and experience, etc. So that's very, very important, that sort of intentional village. For more advanced arcologies, if you can think a little bit further in the future, you can imagine fully supporting green economics with a new form of green digital currency and democratic corporations, which allow you to detach yourself from the endless growth or requirement that our current economy has. That's what you need to end up to have, like, closed cycles that put the needs of humans first and create fulfilling lives. So that's the sort of thing you have in more advanced arcologies. And with that, I'm going to pass it over to Libby, and she's going to talk about how arcologies are vital for some of our pressing problems right here in the Southwest and on Earth in general.
Thank you.
Oh, sorry, I forgot this phases one.
This one, right?
Yeah, you can just pop over that one. There you go.
So if we want to colonize Mars, we've got to know what to do on Earth. And right now, we don't know what to do on Earth. You can see these are the tipping points. Climate scientists are saying there are 9 core tipping points, and we're on the threshold of going over those tipping points. We are in a crisis. And so talking about colonizing Mars, we need to put all that effort into saving Earth. Here you are, just take a breath. You're in Phoenix, Arizona. It's been known as the most unsustainable city in the United States. Our water comes from the Colorado River shed, and it is in crisis. If we hit the dead pole, which we could next year, 2 years from now, then water from the river will no longer get into Phoenix. It will no longer get to Tucson. So we're talking about not just a water crisis, an energy crisis, because a lot of our energy comes from the Hoover Dam and the dams on the Colorado River. And we're also talking about a food crisis in the United States. So this is just not a Southwest problem. It is a national crisis. And you can see Phoenix actually gets 38, or Arizona, 38% of their water from the Colorado River. So we're talking about, major shifts in how we live. Hoover Dam. So I'm really interested in what is the bridge between, we're on the bridge to oblivion right now, and we need to find that bridge to arcology, and from there to outer space. So this is an evolutionary archetypal shift in architecture. We're moving into a collective architecture. You can call it a planetary democracy. We absolutely need some kind of global governance so that we can manage our climate that makes sense and that we save planet Earth. So we're moving, the archetypal shift is, if you look at what's happened to Phoenix or LA, we live in urban sprawl. It's just like endless sprawl. And let's not do that to Mars or any other planet. It's the wrong archetype. So that's why I love Arcology, because it's car-free and it's anti-sprawl. So this is also the second agricultural revolution. The first agricultural revolution began in the Neolithic age, and we've built from there. We built villages, and then we built towns, and then we built megalopolises, very unintentionally. Well, arcologies are intentional. And so it's very exciting that we could do vertical urban agriculture. And we've heard a lot about that at this conference.
So, saying that you're sharing.
Sharing this on slides, okay.
Really sorry.
Okay, so let's try to get the right slides.
Still sharing the slides from the last one.
It is, yep.
Okay.
Hey, thank you. Sorry.
Thank you. That fix
Right.
it?
So sorry. Just want to make sure you get the rest.
Yes, thank you. So this is from Solari's book, City in the Image of Man. I don't know why it's doing this. Now it's just, let's see if I can go back. Okay. City in the Image of Man. So this is what I was talking about, this evolution of architecture, evolution of the city. And what really fascinates me about what's happening with Mars is the habitat, thinking about living on a different planet. Well, that's how we need to think about how to live on Earth. Simple formula. This is from the Emerald tablet Hermes, as above, so below. So if we just think about this, then we can have a plan of how we need to reorganize Earth so that we can finally ascend to Mars. So Mars arcologies would be airtight, whereas Earth, we use the biosphere here. So it can be an open arcology. And then, this is a planetary alignment. we are not going to do it chaotically. This is not going to happen. We're going to go extinct. We're not going to make it through the this test of if we are an intelligent species or not. And that deals with a design science revolution, what Buckminster Fuller was talking about.
Thank you, Libby. So what I want to talk about now is like, how Martians and Earthlings can be friends and how we can benefit from each other's work. As Libby said, arcologies are similar to the kind of colonies you have on Mars. It closes some of the cycles, but not all of them. It doesn't close the air and atmospheric cycles, but it does close like water, and you have an exercise in closed biological cycles where you try to generate your own food and you generate your own power locally. So arcologies in a way can be kind of a version 0.2 of a Mars colony. A lot of the software you're going to need for this, software to run a society like democratic systems and monetary economic systems, you can build it and test it right here on Earth and work out the kinks before you get to Mars. Also, a lot of the social systems, all those ideas with intentional villages living together, that kind of thing. Like, if we get that kind of thing wrong, you end up with revolts and riots. And if you read like the Red Mars, Green Mars, Blue Mars books, it'd be nice to try to avoid the kind of revolutions that were necessary in that story arc. So if we get arcologies right here on Earth, we'll be able to colonize the solar system with healthy societies instead of the kind of the stuff you see in the Expanse. And also, if we can manage to get arcologies running on Earth, you reduce the risk of Mars's main trading partner collapsing, which would be very, very helpful. And as Libby said, we really are facing existential dangers here on Earth. Arcologies are an integration of these vital systems, and the integration testing is so important. Like, we've had all sorts of talks about all sorts of different technologies that can be helpful for Mars and what's necessary here and there. We're putting them together in integration testing and trying to do that in a place where if it fails, you can walk away and go to a hotel instead of dying from lack of oxygen is key, right? That's really vital, and I think arcologies can be a vital step along that way. And then for more advanced stuff, you can do testing of more advanced democratic systems, which we've had plans for. And also green currencies and green economies. And with that, we wanted to make sure there's room left over for questions. So we'll turn it over now for questions. Libby, why don't you come up? We can either both dispense or.
Okay. The concept of controlled ecological life support suggests that arcology that it's actually more supportive of our health and nutrition spirit than is naturally available on Earth, rather chaotic developed over time. What do you have you formed an opinion about the value of cells? Forming a better form of arcology than we have here and in natural environment?
Did you pick on that question? I'm not sure I understood the whole.
Yeah, we really need a test site. We need to test it out. Paula Solari has one. For anybody that's interested, you can drive about 90 miles from here, about an hour and a half north. You can go and see what he actually has built. And maybe 100 people live there. He felt the critical mass in arcology really to make it into what he called the urban effect, which is when everyone's mind is participating and you have this acceleration of knowledge, is about 5,000 people. So let's do that experiment. That's why I came here, to get the Mars people. Hey, let's build something on Earth that can then be duplicated on Mars. Because if we don't have a test site, we're not going to know how to do it, and we're not going to know how to deal with climate change. I think the most important point is that we could create zero carbon arcologies because there are not going to be any cars. People are going to have this agriculture, urban agriculture. There are no pesticides involved here. It's a radical change of traditional farming. And we need to, young people and people my age need to learn how to live together. And we haven't done that yet. So I'm really excited if NASA starts seeing the logic of this and the American people are persuaded that we need such a test site. I think it could happen.
And yes, you'll move on to the next question. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna ask about power systems, nuclear or whatever.
Well, for Earth, we've been thinking very much about solar. It looks like solar power is on track to receive about another 5 to 10-fold reduction in price over the next few years. And there's really nice possibilities with, let's say, perovskite solar cells, where you can have layers that trap the blue and the green light for solar and let the red light through for agriculture below. So, you build one structure and now you've got your agriculture and your solar in one shot. So there's all sorts of interesting possibilities there. Are we out of time?
I would say, I've got one more.
Oh, yes, please, go ahead.
Can I? Yeah, what I love is solar powered satellites. And if we decide, all these space agencies come together, plus the Russians, plus the Chinese, and let's build some solar powered satellites, which then would be beamed down to a world energy grid. Buckminster Fuller envisioned this years ago. And then we would have the energy source to build a network of arcologies, because it's not just one. We need zero carbon cities. It's like migration from a type 0 civilization into a type 1 civilization, which is a planetary civilization. This is a big, big jump.
Go ahead.
Green currencies and scientific and we'd like to develop and we also have transitioned over to aspect with art. See, is there a difference between how green currencies will be in the arcology?
Yes. But we're talking about here 2 phases. So you can imagine the first phase, which could be for like the Southwest here. And that's an ecology that's still fully integrated into the current economic system. It's just solves the water problem and tries to create a town of maybe 2,000 to 5,000 people. But you can imagine a more advanced arcology could allow us to colonize areas of the Earth or settle areas of the Earth that we haven't been able to settle before, like the Australian outback and parts of Iceland and that kind of thing. And there you could imagine an arcology with its own legal system, its own jurisdiction, which could have its own currency. And the critical difference is that the money that's used and made there isn't tied to the creation of debt the way money is here. So this is a big topic, but the key part of it is that the currency is managed in such a way that it's price stable at all times. And also it has a concept of demurrage, which means that it's actually decaying. At the end of the year, if you start with $1,000 in your account, end of the year, you got like $997 in your account. And that means that the money decays in the same way as everything else in the economy decays. And therefore, that's the advantage of money over physical stuff is no longer there, which helps for a greener economy. But that's a big topic, so I can't go too much into that.
I would also like to add how I visualize this is that there would also be a universal basic income, because this is this needs to be a rapid mobilization. We need to get everybody working for this new paradigm. And so to pay people to play this new game, I think we need. And we want everyone to be liberated to do what they can do best. And the present economic system doesn't work that way. You might have to fit your talent into some kind of corporate system that's really against your values. So this is to liberate us. Where do we sign?
Yes, you.
Assuming, there'd be businesses, all sorts of life going on. How would you go about expanding their ecology to account for expanding industry within the arcology? companies needing to hire additional employees, how would you go about
Right.
accommodating that?
So I guess there's two answers to that. The first one is that we won't need office space anymore. Instead, you just have meeting rooms that are distributed over the Arcology that anyone could book at any time. So work from home, book a meeting room, off you go. So that would make, just regular companies, it's more affordable to run a company in that sense.
So even like bringing in new people.
Sure, yeah.
Like that extra living space, like how does that expand? How
Yeah.
would that look?
A couple of things. One is that you would start with like a single, or like a minimum size Arcology, like 2,000 to 5,000 people, right? And then you can imagine building a second one beside it, and then another one, and you can imagine like hubs of, let's say, 5 with a railway hub in the center of it, and then you can create a line of those with basically the train going back and forth. And when that fills up, then you can build a new hub and start building spokes out that way. So you can if you start in a place that's empty enough already, you can gradually scale this from 5,000 people up to 100,000 or even 500,000 people over time. And of course, people who are living in Arcologies were the ones that built them. So now you have an area of expertise that you can sell to the rest of the world. Now you have Arcologists building more Arcologists, and it's kind of like a new or slightly modified form of life that then multiplies over the world and eventually replaces the old towns and cities that came before. You want to take the next one?
Yes.
Being food independent. And about what portion be dedicated towards
Yeah, the growing food thing. I am not a mathematician or scientist. I'm an artist, but that's why I'm giving out this vision with Patrick, so we can get the people who can do the math, and maybe Patrick can, but I can't. So that's why we want to recruit people to this because it's so exciting, it's so necessary. Absolutely necessary, and we need all the brain power that we can get.
And also contribute to that one. Another thing to say about like food independence and the scale and the infrastructure needed. If you look around in our society today, it's actually shocking how much infrastructure we actually support. It's actually amazing. Like you think about all of the highways and all of the turnpikes and the airports and the factories and the stadiums, it's quite amazing. So you look at something like an Arcology, the amount of stuff per person, even though agriculture becomes more expensive because it's more contained and it's indoors and it's vertical, etc. That more than pays for itself in huge, massive efficiencies across the rest of the system, which includes things like not needing to have cars, far cheaper transportation infrastructure, etc., etc. So my intuition, although the numbers are hard to run, is that it's going to be far more affordable standard of living than the kind of life we have today, where everyone has to work their tails off to maintain all of the infrastructure across our whole civilization. That's why we're all working so hard right now. Go ahead. Sorry. Yeah, I think you were first, sir. Yeah.
Okay.
All right. I guess we'll take you over there.
So I was really lucky when I was in 6th grade, my local public library got a copy of The City of the Image of Man, and you have to open it up on the big table, and it was fantastic. So those images have been in my mind ever since I was in 6th grade. And I've been watching for them and waiting for them. And why do you think we haven't seen this done on any scale larger than our percentage?
The biggest thing I think is that, is that we haven't had a sufficient crisis yet. I mean, this requires us to push against what's normal and push and find different ways of solving basic problems. And that's something that people don't generally do very well. But they say never let a good catastrophe go to waste. And that's sort of what we're approaching right now in the Southwest.
And I would add that Solari was a genius, but he was not a feminist. And so half of his brain was an idiot and half of his brain was a genius. And he needed that half of his brain, that feminist half, to make it happen. So yeah, we need the whole brain.
Thank you very much.